Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody is well. The season's finally getting started to some extent, which is a good thing for all of us. Tonight we got Mark McInnes and Tommy Abbott going to do a little introduction, and then we're going to turn over to Mark, and we're going to get right at it. So enjoy. Thanks.
Thanks, Tommy. Just want to give you guys a little quick history of face-offs. I always start with some kind of a deal that gives us the reason to be where we are right now. So I went back and looked at some rule books to see what the deal is with face-offs and how we evolved to this point. Back in 1964, the face-off rule was now in Rule 6. It was still the play of the game. It consisted of 3 paragraphs and 1 small section that talked about face-offs in other parts of the field. So for you old guys, we can remember that. For the new guys, you missed out on a lot of good fun because that was lacrosse's version of a rugby scrum. And if you didn't get killed, you were a lucky guy. But thankfully, we got away from that. In the 1970s, the plastic stick came along. Face-off suddenly became really important. The athletes were really good at doing what they were doing. Plastic stick gave them an advantage, and in 1979, the Rules Committee decided to take the face-off out of the game. That experiment lasted 1 year, and in 1980, they put it back in. So the same thing that's going on today happened back then. They had a rule that had all kinds of good intent in it, and it didn't pan out for them, so they changed it back. The next 3 decades, we spent some time with rules that developed the issue of the face-off and possession being gained by a team for long lengths of time. So we did, the Rules Committee went through a series of things that tried to change the tempo of the game and the length of a possession. But it was all based upon the face-off, which continues to be, for the last 5 decades or longer, an issue that we're dealing with right now. At some point in the last dozen years or so, the committee changed their thinking, and they allowed face-off players to do whatever they wanted to do, which took out the part of the rule standing on one side of the field and allowed them to go down to a knee. The unintended consequences of that were the moto grip, long scrums, long stalemates, all stuck in the back of sticks and players carrying it down the field. So the committee again readdressed the issue this year, and it's been on their docket for at least the last 40, 50 years, ever since I've been in the game. And they decided to make some changes going back to principles that they felt were important. And those principles were, how do you start play? How do you create a 50-50 ground ball? Because that's really what it's about. How do you get it out quickly? How do you eliminate mangled sticks and long stalemates? So they came up with a series of rules. And again, it's the Rules Committee, which is made up of coaches and administrators. And that's been the case forever. So the best names in the game, the best minds in the game have been thinking about this for a long time. And it continues to be an issue for us. So essentially, they changed the rules. They went back to the standing position for a player. Can't go to a knee. The hand closest to the throat, and that was designed on a purpose to, some players might try to flip-flop their hands around or do something different. So they said the hand closest to the throat needs to be palm up. And the third violation is served by the player instead of the in-home. And lastly, we made some changes a few weeks ago. It was based upon COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're in right now. And that basically was to put the ball on the ground prior to saying down. And that just came out the last 2 to 3 weeks. And we're trying to deal with it the best we can. Our initial mechanic, we found out, was probably the best way to do it. The committee wanted a guy to look down the line for verticality. We found out in about 24 hours that that's not the best way to view it. And thankfully, NILOA and COC over the last 40 years has developed some pretty good ideas on how to do things. The committee makes the rules. The referees have to figure out how to do it. So we're still doing that today. So essentially, that face-off mechanic lasted about a day. We changed it last Saturday morning for the games the rest of the weekend. And we're going back. Mark's going to develop, Mark and Brian and Tommy and I developed this PowerPoint that we're going to share with you tonight. And I'm going to take it to the coaches and allow them to see the PowerPoint and a summary of what we're talking about tonight as well. So they will all know what the deal is. It's important that we all know. So essentially, COVID dictates what we can do this year, which is not what the intent of the committee was. The intent of the committee was to allow us to go in and touch the sticks and keep the verticality there. The issue is always when a player's standing is when he comes down, he's going to have some kind of tilt because it's an awkward position for those guys to be in. And they've been taught in the last 15, 20 years by coaches and clinics and specialized players have developed a way of doing things that is not what the committee is telling them to do this year. So we knew verticality was going to be an issue, and it probably will be for the rest of the year unless we do it the right way. We need to have one common goal to get it right and to make sure that we officiate it the same way every time. Like I said, the committee makes the rules. It's up to us to figure out how to officiate them. And we have to come away with one thought tonight. Basically, this is going to be a quick, efficient way to face off. There's zero tolerance for players who do not comply when you get them down in position. Very few verbal announcements to them and violate them right away. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark. He can run through the PowerPoint and we'll take some questions after that.
Thanks, TA. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity here. Certainly honored to have the opportunity to talk to you about face-offs. As TA said, as I was getting prepared with the help of BA but you guys can see my screen okay? PowerPoint?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. For some reason I lost it on my screen here, so 1 second. Okay, there we go. As I was preparing with the help of BA and Suddy and TA, I was really amazed that as you look at the rule book, about 9% of the book is dedicated to face-offs, and there's 28 ARs. And I don't think there's no plan tonight to go through all the intricacies that you'll find in the book around face-offs, but certainly the goal in putting this together is to develop that consistency, across the country in mechanics and how we officiate the face-off. So, from an agenda perspective, I'm going to sort of review some of the things that TA said in his opening comments, talk about the rule changes, talk about the points of emphasis, and talk about mechanics. I think there is a Q&A going on in the chat that BA is going to monitor. So if you guys have questions as we're going through this, pop the question in the chat, and we'll be sure to get those answered either on the session here, or after the call as well. So first off, just looking at the rule changes, as TA said, there's 3 that are pretty significant, and there were a couple others that were highlighted in the book as I guess reinforcements. The first one, right, is the standing neutral grip, right? Players are required to stand as they get into the face-off position. Hand closest to the throat must be in a palm up, as you see in the picture below. And then as TA said, instead of the in-home serve in the 3rd violation, the face-off player who violated will serve the penalty. The other 2, the all fingers of both hands shall be gloved and wrapped around the cross, and having the hands be touching the ground are not new changes. They were just highlighted in the book as reinforcements, if you will. So those are the, as we start with a rule-based view, those are the major changes relative to the face-off. Now, points of emphasis, as those of you that watched the NCAA video, the first thing that was said, by the commentators was, number 1, the overriding principle is to continue to play the ball first. As TA said, I think that the second bullet here, no tolerance for violation, right? In years past, we would correct the guys at the line. You know, it's pretty simple now. They either line up correctly or we'll call a violation. And I know this is going, you know, pretty significant change for us, you know, in years past, but it's an expectation that committee and, you know, the assigners have of us. So it's something that we're going to do. So we'll get into the mechanics of how we're going to get guys down and lined up correctly. But if they don't, you know, it's pretty simple. A violation will be called on the offending player. There's a continued desire that once a player has control, that they must move the ball immediately. You know, the same way that any player on the field, you know, can't have their cross on the ball for any length of time. They must move the ball. The same applies to the face-off player. You know, a little bit into mechanics that we'll get into as I go through the next couple of slides. You know, as we talked, we really don't want the helper, you know, saying anything. You know, mostly silent but focused, I put here. So, you know, in years past, depending on crews that you were working on, you know, some of us might have the helper do all the talking and the actual single side official not doing much. Just for consistency purposes and more importantly, to be quick and efficient, as TA said, we want the face-off official doing all the talking. Now, the helper still needs to be active in officiating the play, you know, looking at the backhand, making sure the neutral zone is clear, you know, focus on that player that's closest to them in terms of moving early. But it's a silent observation, if you will. And obviously, if you do see something, if they're not lined up correctly or they do violate, you know, absolutely need you to blow the whistle and make the call. The committee also said in the NCAA video that helmet-to-helmet contact continues to be a concern. You know, the mere fact of a helmet on a body or a helmet-to-helmet doesn't warrant the violation, but if there's leverage gained or displacement, you know, that's a call we need to make. And then, you know, if there's one thing, maybe if there's two things that I'd want you to leave with the call, you know, the first is if there is no warnings, if we see them lined up incorrectly, you know, there is no correction, we violate. The second thing is quick and efficient, right? The committee really wants this to be a 4 or 5 second process, get the guys down and get out of there and get on with play. You know, as we went through this, I mean, I think it's ever more important with the fact that we're going to limit communication and not do corrections at the line. That pregame meeting that we have with the one face-off player and the one coach, you know, due to the COVID restrictions, becomes ever more important. You know, and it even starts, you know, before you actually have the meeting on the field with the coach and the face-off player. I mean, this is a discussion that obviously needs to be part of every pregame. And I like to tell my crew, and I'm fortunate to be the crew chief, you know, I have like the 3 C's with my crew, right? You know, we need to communicate with clarity around the face-off. That's the first C. The second C is we need to be committed and consistent, you know, from the start of the game to the end of the game. And then the in-game piece, the third C, is we need to be, you know, courtesy. We need to have courtesy with the face-off players, have a discussion with them when we can, and be courteous and listen to them so that we can all get through the game together. And we need to be constructive with our feedback so they understand if there is a violation, if we have an opportunity to have a conversation with them before the next face-off, that we do that. You know, so I think those 3 C's are important. When you get onto the field and you actually do the pregame meeting, you know, with the coach and the face-off player, I mean, I think it's really important to set the tone on what our expectations are with the face-off. You know, Brian BA had said as we were preparing for this that, you know, he likes to tell his crew that, you know, how we officiate the face-off oftentimes dictates, you know, how the game will go. So I think it's an opportunity for all of us, if you're the crew chief talking to the guys, to just, you know, give the reminders of how we're going to officiate the process. You know, start with standing up, got to go down together, stay off the plastic, stay out of the neutral zone, you know, heads, elbows, feet. Make sure that they understand that verticality, we know it's a challenge, right? As TA said, with the palm up grip, you know, it's almost like the stick is going to be not vertical just by nature of the grip. So you might want to tell the guys to just be conscious of that. They may even have to like curl their wrists a little bit towards them to stay vertical. Obviously, no movement after set. And, you know, most important, you know, 0 tolerance for violation. So those guys have one opportunity to line up correctly, you know, straight up and down, ball, you know, in the middle of the cross, you know, up to not touching the line. all that stuff that we've been doing as face-off officials for years. If they do that, we can get them down, we can get them off, very quickly and very efficiently. And I think it's also important, right, in that pregame meeting. I always say with the face-off guys that we're there to make sure that they're fair and legal face-offs. If there's something that you see that the other guy is doing, let us know and we'll work through it together. Setting that tone that we're there together to make sure it's all fair together, I think is important as well. So, set the proper tone in the pregame meeting is ever more critical, because there's not going to be a lot of conversation as we're going through the game with face-offs. Let's move into mechanics. First off, single side official, your responsibilities, no doubt with the lack of, with you doing, all the talking, you're still going to be in charge of the face-off. As TA said, I mean, the mechanics of what we're doing is essentially the same as last year. Where we're standing, we're only a couple of, paces maybe off the line when we're telling them to go down so that we can keep things moving, quickly. The only thing we're not doing is we're not, touching the sticks and balls after we're saying set. So when we're ready, when you get that signal from, the bench side official or your helper official, you place the ball on the ground. Approximately 2 steps away, you say down. You quickly check the neutral zone, make sure the ball's in the middle, top to stop, ball in the center. As I said, no compliance equals violation. Then you move in and look from above, like the sky cam view is like what I like to say. So we're looking up above, down at the sticks, making sure they're vertical. If one player is not legal, we violate immediately. If we have that unenviable situation where both players are not legal, TA and VA and Suddy have said, we'll give them one verbal warning to get vertical. So that's the only time that we'll actually give a warning to get corrected, is if both players are illegal. So just remember that. Then if it's all good, you say set, back away and blow the whistle and clear of the area. No change, from that mechanic from last year. In terms of the helper responsibility, again, little to no talk, stand a little closer to midline to get a view of the neutral zone, and top to stop. I think everybody, needs to, be comfortable where they're standing based on their ability to, get out of the play and not get run over by the wing players and get to the goal. Some of that might mean you're a little closer to the midline. Some of that might be you're a little further away. Do what feels comfortable based on, your ability to officiate moving forward. Very little conversation if all. Only speak if necessary. And I would submit that, there's really no talk. You may, as you get to the next face-off, may have something to say just as a reminder. But in terms of once the single side official is officiating and begun the start of the face-off by saying down, there's really no need for you to have anything to add from a speaking standpoint. Now, I think the primary focus as a helper, is to look at that backhand that the single side can't see, neutral zone. And obviously, it's helpful. You get a little wider view, a little bigger picture to help with, early movement that the single side might not be able to see. The thing we need to do, right, identify the wing players to ensure we have the proper escape route. You might take a quick look, as you're backing away into position where you're going to get to a stationary position, just make sure you understand where the wing players are so you have your escape route. Obviously, we're all out there trying to avoid contact and make sure we get to the goal line, to cover any, quick, fast break. And I think most importantly, right, I mean, the helper is there to officiate. It's not all on the single side. It's a tough play to officiate at times. If you see a violation, help your crew out and blow the whistle. Don't assume that, just because the single side official is closer to the play that he sees it. Help your partner out. If you see a violation, blow the whistle. From a lead right wing responsibility, right? No change year to year on this, right? You're kind of the general, just overseeing the entire field, making sure the clock is stopped, making sure the shot clock is reset, ensuring the box area is clean. You signal the field is ready to your partners. You're responsible for both near and far wings, right? You can get to a position, where you think you can see, both wings. Pay particular attention to players that are close. And we've all experienced, those far wing players that are kind of jabbing at each other and they need some communication from us to let them know that we're watching them. Most importantly, I think from a wing responsibility, is you have the big picture, right? You're able to see, one of the wing players, come in that might, hit the face-off guy or have a violent hit or do something. Your vision is much broader than the two guys that are officiating the face-off. So, do your job and have a big picture view and help out your fellow officials, as a wing official as well. And then, make sure the shot clock starts with possession, right? It's a good spot to just take a quick glance at the shot clock, make sure, once we have possession that the shot clock operator has actually started the clock. Other thoughts, from me. I mean, I think, this is an area of the game that I feel like I need to continue to get better at. I think a lot of us feel like we could do a better job at the face-off. I think this is a really good opportunity for us to, see the games on TV, watch what's happening, see a violation, hit the rewind button on the DVR and take a look at it. I think it's also an opportunity for us as we're officiating, to learn from what the players are doing. Are they popping it forward, and are we getting hit by the ball 3 or 4 times in a row? Well, maybe we want to stand in a little different direction. But they're always raking it left. Where are the wing players standing? So, we have an understanding of, where the ball is most likely going to be going if that player wins the face-off. Just be a student in advance of the game and be a student within the game, so you can anticipate what's happening. I think we all know that controlling the face-off often controls the game. The committee has tried to, I think limit that in some respects. But we know this is really an important area for us to get right, as we're officiating in the game, because as BA correctly said, right, controlling the face-off and making sure it's legal and fair, oftentimes, helps us out, throughout the game. As I said, pre-game messaging, I don't think it needs to be a 5-minute oratory explanation of the 28 ARs and the 7 pages in the rule book that are dedicated to face-off, but I think it's a simple review of what we're looking for, make sure everybody's on the same page, and then as we're going through the game, it's always nice to check in with the face-off guys to see how they think we're doing, and if there's anything they'd like us to change or any feedback they have in terms of what the other guy's doing. I talk about this, and I'm sure a lot of people talk about this. I mean, it's easy to officiate the face-off in the first quarter and the second quarter. It's harder to be, consistent and have a real commitment to detail throughout the game. And I think what I've experienced is when we have good consistency and we have good commitment from the first face-off to the last face-off, things go pretty well. If we start to, get a little lazy, not being as strict in terms of legality and lineup, things start to quickly, go south for us. So I would, just remind your crew throughout the game, remind your other, partners, let's make sure we're doing what we should be doing, and there's a real commitment to make these guys line up correctly, so that the ball comes out and we're being quick and efficient as we're officiating it. As we go through the game, use the opportunities, with timeouts in between quarters. Maybe even before the face-off, if you're fortunate enough to be doing a TV game where there's like a delay or something, discuss what you're seeing. I know I've missed things, and when my partner said, "Did you see that?" I'm like, "All right, I'll take a look at it." So use the little moments of time as an opportunity to discuss what the two guys are doing and where you can get better as a crew. Don't miss that opportunity. I think we don't talk a lot about restarts anymore, because I think, collectively, probably the organization is doing a really good job. But as I was thinking about this, and maybe in particular for the new guys in the organization, lots of times the players are in a hurry to get restarted, right? They're getting the ball and they just want to go, go, go. I think it's an opportunity for us, to take a little breath in the game, let everybody know what happened, who violated, before we get things started again, and not have, not run a player into violation, not doing the 5-yard thing. So I think you blow the whistle if you have a violation, take a breath, state what the violation is, pause again, and then color and point. So it might be, tweet, holds, red, going that way, right? And then restart it. You know, I still think we want the single side guy to do all the restarts, the helper and the wing official are making sure that we're in position, nobody's crossing the restraining line, that good stuff. So, you know, take the opportunity to take a breath, you know, and then after we've done the restart, I think we're still signaling to the bench the number of violations, so everybody knows what the violation count is. There's no confusion. And that's also an opportunity for the bench side official to help out communicating, you know, whether that was a, you know, face-off violation, you know, or it was away. So I think that's, you know, that's the highlights that I wanted to share. I mean, again, just to reinforce the two messages, and I'm sure there's some questions. I'm sure there's some things that Suddy or TA want to say. Remember, if they're not legal going down, it's a violation. Below the whistle, no change, no warning. And number two, just try to do it as quick and efficient as possible. You do that, we'll get the ball down, we'll get those guys out of there, we'll get a ground ball, and we'll be off and running on our way to you know, the play that we want to see as officials out there. So thank you for the opportunity. Suddy, TA, back to you with any questions.
Yeah, Mark, I appreciate your time and effort in that presentation. Well done. A couple points of emphasis that Mark went over that are really important. The helper needs to make violation calls. All right, that's what you're there for. That's why we brought you in close. Make the call. If you see a jump, you see a move, the face-off guy blowing the whistle, moving backwards, his eyes are moving, make the call if you see him jump. That's what you're there for. I'm going to go back to Tommy real quick. Tommy, you want to talk about stick checks and what the committee wishes are for possible addition to the stick check? Not addition, different method or different philosophy.
Yeah, the philosophy on stick checks for years has been that we get 6. And back when we had some issues with the face-off years ago, officials were checking sticks of face-off guys at least a couple times a game. The problem with it is usually you can only get them when the sticks are legal, which is probably okay. But the committee wants everyone to know that everyone's stick can be checked during the course of a game. So we want to make sure that we grab a few face-off player sticks during the contest. I had a couple of comments on some sticks from referees last weekend that maybe they're not real straight, maybe they're baked, maybe, you know, whatever. And the issue we now have with COVID is that we don't have a tabletop usually because there's no table or staff over there anymore. So we'll have to make sure that when we do this, that we find a way to make sure we can do a tabletop test somehow. Because the way that sticks are being bent and maneuvered does have an effect on the verticality and whether or not they line up correctly. It makes a big difference for some of those guys. So make sure we're checking face-off sticks at some point during the game. And if you see one that's bad, if it's really bad, you got to throw it out. We have to do what the committee is asking us to do because it's their game. I think one of the really good points, Mark, you did an awesome job tonight. I think one of the really good points that you made was, you know, take command of the face-off. We do it a couple dozen times a game in a high-scoring game. It's a chance for us to communicate with those players, to take charge of the game, to show our command that this is our space, this is what we're doing. And if they're violating, we violate them. That's what the committee wants. That's how to clean this up. I think the hard part is in a COVID world, we can't go in there and touch sticks and move players around. And if we adjust one player, he's going to move and the other coach is going to go crazy. So that's the purpose of this. If you see it, call it, violate them, and move on. If it's quick and efficient, things will work out. The committee wants to keep the face-off in the game. It's a great way of starting. It's a great way of having transition happen. And it's a great way to get rallies going at the end of a game if somebody's doing it the right way and winning a bunch. So they certainly don't want to take it out. They did that before, and I know they don't want to do it again. I think there was one question, Tommy, about third violation if it's a wing guy. If it is a wing guy, it's on page 31. It's item number 9. The player who violates is the player who goes to the penalty box. So it would be the wing guy. If he's the violator, then he goes. It's not always the face-off guy.
You froze a little bit. Can you repeat after
Yeah, I
page
can.
9?
Yep, page
Sorry
30.
about that.
Page
You
30.
froze a little bit.
Yep,
30.
page 30. And it's item number 9. So the player who violates is the player who goes to the penalty box. So if it's a wing guy, it's a wing guy. It goes. It's not always the face-off man. Outside of that, that's about all I have. If you have any
Yep.
questions, Tom.
One other question we had, I think we said 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, the question was, is they are the only one going to do the face-off meeting pre-game, and that's what we decided on. The referee is going to do that. That just reemphasizes the need to be all on the same page during the pre-game, and the referee inform the other 2 teammates what happened during that face-off meeting, if anything unusual happened. So that was about the extent of the questions. If there's some more out there, we'll get a memo out if need be to answer any further questions. But again, Mark, thank you very much. Tommy, thanks for your time. BA for your effort also. And everybody have a good night. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.